AI can build a website for you in one click. I do like that it's gone through and it's done this little interactive bit. I would honestly put this overall at a but is it any good? And more importantly, will it actually get you customers? That's what we're going to be testing today. Over the past 2 years, we've seen AI builders completely change how websites are created. However, even though they might look good when it comes to design, some builders actually ruin your website's results, specifically how well they convert. As someone who's designed hundreds, if not thousands of websites for businesses, I'm going to be putting these AI builders to the test. This way, you can see if any of them are the right choice for you. Now, before we jump into the tools, let me set the rules for the test. Rather than just sitting inside each one of these platforms and prompting forever until something looks good, I'm going to limit myself to one main prompt and 2 reprompts per tool, because no one should have to spend hours rewriting the same prompt 20 different ways just to get a usable homepage. If you do, it's a pretty good indicator that the tool isn't good. And on top of that, I'm going to be scoring each one of these against the same 4 criteria: ease of use, visual design, messaging clarity, and conversion architecture, because those are the 4 things that actually determine whether a website is a business asset or just decoration. And with that said, let's get started with tool number 1, Lovable. It positions itself as the idea to app builder, and it's probably one of the most talked about tools in the space right now because its entire pitch is that it's basically your full stack engineer. You describe what you want in plain English and it handles the code, the deployment, and the backend all at once, which means it's mainly aimed at non-technical founders who want to go from idea to live website without having to do any of the learning or stitching of tools together. Pricing is free to start at 30 credits a month, then Pro kicks in at $25 a month for an extra 100 monthly credits. But let's see how well it actually performs in real life. All right, we have Lovable here. So let's copy and paste our prompt into the terminal and let it rip. All right, so we have our page generated by Lovable. Let's take a look at it from top to bottom, see how it's doing. So a couple things. It has done a good job of laying out this hero header, and it has the components, I would say, that are important for a successful hero header, right? You have a dominant headline that's clearly visible. You have a primary and a secondary call to action that are clearly visible and differentiated from the page, and you have an image component that's meant to kind of tie it all together. So the pieces are there. The problem is the success of these pieces individually are a little lackluster. I'll kind of go into it. So the headline, the eyebrow text built for $10 million to $100 million projects, I don't know if I would include that in headline text, because what's to say that this can't be used for larger scale projects, right? Like you're kind of like limiting yourself right out of the gate by leveraging this particular language here. So I'd probably kill that entirely or think of something else that's going to be less limiting, like potentially a little proof point or something that could be notated there. The headline itself is good. I mean, it's speaking to pain point that customers are having. I just wish it was a little bit more specific in regards to the industry that's being referenced here. Subheadlines actually better than the headline in terms of addressing the pain points that potential customers are working with, so that's actually not bad. The primary call to action and secondary call to action, so protect your margins. I don't quite know what that means. So before the click, it's not obvious to me what my next action is going to be. And then watch 2-minute briefing. Something about that language that's a little awkward. Like I don't quite know what 2-min briefing means. I'm assuming this is some sort of a demo video, but I think we can make this language a lot more specific. And then when we look at the image over here on the right, it's small. It's showing you kind of a generic dashboard. It's not really highlighting specifically what we're trying to communicate on the left. So I feel like that's a miss as well. I also don't love the fact that it's a box within a box. It just looks clunky. When we scroll down to the next section, one thing I do want to note is that they have these stats that are highlighted here that I think customers would perceive as valuable. The challenge is that you're not really seeing that before you scroll down the page, right? So if some of these elements were potentially removed or adjusted in size or scale, you can get some of these metrics higher up and see them in a glance. It might be more valuable. When we get to the engineered for site reality section, it's got the standard 3-column layout, 1, 2, 3. The 1, 2, 3 here doesn't really relate to each other. Like it's not like step 1, step 2, step 3. They're just 3 independent dots that they added these numerics to. The headline and subheadline, nothing too crazy stand out about this. Again, I think that this could do a better job of speaking directly to aspirations or pain points. Right now, they're kind of somewhere in the middle. And then the subheadlines, again, do a pretty good job of speaking to some of the features, some of the pain points, so actually better job with the subheadlines. The visuals, again, are very lackluster. They're not really connecting with the points for each one of these columns that are being made. There's also no call to action in this section as well, so we're not reinforcing the call to action from the hero section section, we're kind of just scrolling past. Then we scroll to this methodology and integration section. It's not super clear to me that this is an integration section at first glance. I don't love the list presentation here. I feel like this would be better served in some sort of grid with logos that makes it really clear. Oh, okay, like, yep, I need to integrate with this and this and this. I also don't love this integration chart that they have over here on the right-hand side. 21-day implementation could potentially be a barrier for people, not an asset, especially when we're talking about technology. Like, a lot of these connections tend to be instantaneous, so I don't know why we would want to put 21 days as a barrier potentially in front of somebody. And then it's good that they're talking about steps, but I don't know if that's what somebody's looking for here. I would want to see steps more associated with what happens after I potentially engage for a sales chat or something like that. Scrolling down a little bit further, we have this like stocky photo of a job site on the left with a testimonial on it. The kind of like asymmetrical, like overlapping design here feels very out of place. Like, there's no other elements of that elsewhere on the page, so it's kind of just there. To me, this is reading as like I'm gonna check off the boxes and cross off some of these objectives, but again, there's no call to action here. There's no next step that I should be taking, so that seems like a missed opportunity. And then when we end the page, you can see that there's a final call to action that's just kind of on this like flat white background. I do think the call to action here is significantly stronger than the call to action in the hero header, because it's more obvious to me. Okay, margin audit, so they're going to actually take the time to maybe like look at my current data and give me an understanding of how the tool could add dollars back to my bottom line. I would opt to use that call to action consistently in the hero header and then in some of these subsequent sections as well. I think this would also be a differentiator from other software products that might just have schedule a demo. But overall, I don't think that this page is particularly horrible, but I also don't think it's great. I would probably give it a C+ rating. There's not really anything about the visual design that gives me a sense of branding or identity. It's kind of just a very generic design. The imagery that's being used throughout the pages is just okay. It's not really doing a great job of like really honing in. Same thing with the copy. The copy is just okay. And again, lots of conversion opportunities missed by not having call to actions persistently through. And one other thing I did want to mention is in the hero header, they have this book a demo button. Don't have this book a demo mentioned anywhere else. The primary call to action seems to be a margin audit. So that being disconnected is also potentially a problem. So again, I would give this a C+, passable, but not something I would want to bank my business on. But what if you don't want to waste your time figuring out what's wrong with your website in the first place? Well, in that case, you can have one of our expert team members review it and give you a customized website improvement plan for free by clicking the link in the description below. We've created over 100,000 high converting pages for clients like NBC Sports, Revlon, and Boston Dynamics. So if you want to know exactly what your website needs to start generating more leads and how you can make these changes as soon as possible, just click the link in the description below. Next is Base44, and this one actually has a bit of a backstory. It was actually acquired by Wix, one of the original website builder platforms, back in April 2025. Now, what sets it apart from other tools on this list is that it's advertised as being a fully all-in-one solution for building websites and apps. That said, pricing has gotten a bit steeper since the Wix acquisition. You can still try it out with a free account, while the starter package starts at $16 a month and the pro costs $80 a month. But let's see what it can do just given the same prompt we used for Lovable. All right, next up we have Base44. So let's take our prompt and put it in their terminal and see what we get. Okay, so we have our page ready from Base44. Let's check it out. All right, interesting. So from the hero header, we can see that we actually have some core components going on here. And honestly, it's doing a good job of capturing the key components we want for one of these headers. So we have clearly differentiated headline, subheadline, primary and secondary call to action. We have some proof metrics up top, and then we also have a visual that's kind of connecting with what we got going on here. So starting on the left-hand side, I don't love the project management for $10 to $100 million jobs. I feel like it potentially limits who a customer can be. It's nothing to say that a $250 million job can't use this software, right? I also like the play with color emphasis on the word protect it. I think it's sometimes I'll see this used as a tactic, but it's not used correctly. I actually think that they've used it correctly here in this particular styling, and I think it's very direct direct in terms of what's being said. So I think pretty successful there. Cornerstack gives general contractors a real-time visibility into every subcontractor schedule, flagging delays before they cascade and cutting the overruns that eat your profit. So good. Talking about what it does, talking about the actual business objectives that it accomplishes. So plus on both of those. See the margin protector versus watch a 90-second demo. Both of these call to actions are very clear in terms of what they're offering. So definitely check mark there. The values that it's highlighting here, I think, are all like legit values that would potentially matter to a customer. And I do find this schedule stream live scroller interesting. I don't know exactly how this connects to the product, but I do think the fact that it is chosen to incorporate some movement and animation into the design, potentially like a live ticker of what would be going on with the product, I think it's interesting and it's a good attempt at bringing everything together here. When I scroll down and I'm taking a look at the cascade prevention and we're seeing a simulation here, pretty interesting to me that it's also giving us this like little thing that I can interact with, and then it also shows me, you know, overrun protected and how much was saved. So I actually really think this is a cool way of visualizing the potential product and how it works in real time. So I think that's pretty smart as a way to demonstrate it. It's definitely something unique to the other ones that we've run so far in terms of visualization and interactivity. If we scroll down a little bit further, we're talking about integrations. Here, integrations are broken out into a grid, and it's talking about being able to integrate within 60 seconds, no sync pending. So it's addressing the real-time data thing. So I think this is structured well. This is how I would expect to see something like an integration section structured. Here we have a little testimonial section with some other builders, and then we have down here project efficiency that isn't abstract, it's money. This I think is actually another smart way of incorporating real world metrics in terms of what they anticipate here. So cumulative margin protected 287 million, 22 days saved, 47% fewer change orders, 2.1 million margin protected, and then 14% tighter margin. So again, if I'm on a job, I'm looking at tools that could potentially help me. This is doing a good job of kind of drawing real world connections there. And then we end with a call to action, request a demo, or see pricing. This secondary differs from this secondary, so that was, I would say, is like a little point of could be made more consistent. Also worth noting, we don't really have call to actions in any of these previous sections, so I do think we could benefit from having call to actions reinforced in some of these previous sections that we have on the page. And aside from the hero header, which has social proof incorporated in the section, we're not necessarily incorporating social proof here, although you could potentially make the argument that these metrics fulfill that necessity. So I will say the other thing is that there is a clear visual direction or stylistic choice with the design that's presented here, definitely more than some of the other examples that we've gone through. There isn't a ton of visualization of the product itself beyond some of these more abstract visualizations, so I feel like that could potentially be an opportunity to like push this a bit further. But I do like that it's gone through and it's done this little interactive bit, which is a bit unique and a bit different. So I would honestly put this overall at a B+. I think there's some things that can be cleaned up in terms of more clear call to actions and paths, maybe some more visuals that are specific to the products, maybe some more social proof that's integrated throughout. But overall, this is actually a pretty good first shot at a page, and one that I wouldn't be upset being a representation of the product. So well done, Base 44. I think this is a pretty impressive first shot. Now, Bolt.new is where things start to get interesting. Backed by StackBlitz, it's a way more developer-oriented platform than any of the other tools on our list today, meaning it generates real production-ready code right in front of you. And while that's very exciting if you're interested about the back end of the website, that doesn't necessarily mean the final product is better than anyone else's, because a visitor landing on your homepage isn't really going to care whether it was built in Bolt, WordPress, or custom coded from scratch. What they care about is whether your page speaks to their problem, whether they trust you, and whether they know what to do next. So the real question for Bolt is whether a business owner with no technical background can actually use it to produce a website that converts, and if the end result is worth the $25 you pay for their pro monthly subscription. Well, there's only one way to find out. So let's copy and paste our prompt into their terminal and see what we get. All right, the Bolt tool has finished rendering the web page. Let's check it out. All right, so first thoughts checking out the hero header. So it's got some good things working for it, right? We have clearly distinguishable headline, clearly distinguishable call to action, secondary call to action, and then we have the inclusion of some proof points up top as well. We are missing an image piece on the right to kind of connect everything together, so that does feel like a missed opportunity. And one thing to note, I do feel like they're leveraging this eyebrow text effectively. So, they're saying serving 200 plus commercial GCs. It gives you kind of a sense of the tool's scale. Now, whether or not 200 commercial GCs is an impressive number, leave that to you determine. But in terms of headline, subheadline, not bad. So again, like speaking to the problem at hand, stop change orders before they start, talking about the kind of like the actual facets of the tool. So it gives you real-time subcontractor visibility across every trade so that you can catch delays before they cascade, protect your schedule, and close out jobs on margin. So again, they're connecting feature to pain points that customers are experiencing. That's good. Call to action and secondary, not doing anything too fancy here. Book a demo is clear what that means. See how it works. My only argument would be that both of these things are kind of similar. So book a demo, okay, I'm gonna book a live demo with a person, see how it works. It's probably gonna give me a lot of the overlapping info of the demo. So what could we potentially present to somebody that's more value driven in these two call to actions would be my thought. I do think that it's important that they've chosen to highlight some of these metrics up top because these immediately add some proof and credibility in this initial section. So I think that's well. Again, no image, that seems like a missed opportunity. Scrolling down here, I'm assuming this would be placeholder for a logo grid. What you'll notice in a lot of these that we review today is that they won't include actual logos, just names because of copyright concerns. But if we assume that this was a logo grid, there's some more additional social proof up top. And I do like that strategically in this section, they're talking about the problem because this is another opportunity to essentially address the elephant in the room or what customers are concerned about most up front. And each one of these headlines for these subpoints are doing a good job, I think, of speaking to pain points. So overall, the copywriting that it's generated here is not bad, right? Like it's following what I would consider best practices for how we are communicating a product. My issue here is that the presentation is very lackluster. So we're, 3 columns, very simple icons. Now these 3 icons actually do a good job of connecting to each one of these points. But again, there's not a lot of stylization happening here. When I scroll to the next section, we're going to be looking at stack 3 columns again. We're talking about features and we're talking about specific features of the product. I do think it's a big missed opportunity that we're not visualizing the interface of the product with the features that are being called out. So that seems like a miss. Again, we're using some like generic icons instead to represent. No call to action on this section, no call to action on the previous section. When we get to the how it works section, again, another stack 3 columns, simple icons, no call to action. Get to the results section, 4 columns. We switched it up. It's not 3 columns, it's 4 columns on this one. And we're using like a little bit of a card style. Again, generic icons. The metrics and stuff that they're calling out in here are good, but there's no call to action to drive them to the next step. Testimonial section, 3 columns again, stacked in a little bit of a card layout. And then we get down to the pricing grid with a free trial option. If we go down a little bit further, you can see book a demo or start a free trial. So I find it interesting. It actually took me a while to get down to this section and see that they're promoting a free trial on this page. It would make a lot more sense from a call to action standpoint to promote that free trial in this hero header, right? So you can either book a demo, which essentially allows you to see how it works, or get a free trial, which allows you to demo it yourself. No imagery of the actual product anywhere on this page, which again feels like a missed opportunity. I can't really see the product before I'm engaging with it or see how it actually functions. That's going to be important for me potentially using this as my day-to-day every single day, and not a lot of call to action reinforcement. The other thing I want to say is, other than the hero header where we have some social proof integrated with other statements, there's no social proof being integrated with any of these sections. When there is social proof, it's being used as its own completely separate unit, which is okay to use sometimes, but it's also better to have it incorporated incorporated throughout. So top to bottom, I would say this is probably a C+. The layout is clean. The copywriting's actually pretty good for AI, I would say, but the visual design is very generic. There's no incorporation of imagery. There's ample social proof, but it's not incorporated or sewn into the layouts. It's kind of its own individualized thing. So I do think there's a lot of room for improvement to push this further. It's not something that I would want to be the final thing that represents my business. Next up is Replit, and it's probably the most recognizable name on this whole list because it's been around for years, but not in its current form. Before, it was actually a full cloud coding environment for developers, but then it introduced its AI agent, which lets you describe what you want in plain English and have it build it out. Now, one of the main issues people have is that while the core plan is only $20 a month, that's really just the starting point. The agent runs off of effort-based building, so your actual costs range anywhere from $100 to $300 a month, depending on how hard the AI is working, which means even though it's genuinely powerful, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to justifying how much you pay to use it. Luckily, that's not what I'm focused on today, because the real question here is whether a business owner can realistically use Replit to reproduce a web page that converts. So let's try it out. All right, let's check out what Replit has to offer. So let's take our prompt and pop it into their console and see what we get. All right, a few minutes have run by. We have the page now from Replit. Let's take a look at it and see what they gave us. So up top, I can see we have kind of a bold headline, subheadline, single call to action. Background image is quite dark. I can kind of see abstractly that there might be what looks like a building site back there, but it's hard to tell because it is very, very dim. Stop bleeding margin on sub delays. I do feel like this headline could be a little bit more impactful compared to some of the other examples that we've gone through so far. This one isn't resonating with me as much as some of the others. I also don't think they're using the color emphasis correctly here. Stop bleeding margin would probably be the thing I want to emphasize more than on sub delays. The project management platform built for $10 million to $100 million jobs, flag critical path slippage before it cascades into expensive change orders. Again, let's not emphasize that it's $10 to $100 million jobs and try to make this be more ubiquitous for even like larger projects that could potentially use this software. And then some of the language in here might just be a little bit too jargony, like critical path slippage. There's probably a more simplistic way for us to communicate this to a potential prospect. Request a demo is straightforward in terms of what it does. The challenge with demo requests as being the primary call to action is that they're essentially glorified sales calls. So you want to pair this with some sort of secondary call to action that's highly value oriented to make, if somebody's not ready to do a demo, there's still something else that they could potentially latch onto that's going to be really valuable. The other thing to note is that there's no visualization of the product here at all, which I feel is a missed opportunity as well. If we scroll down here, we can see hope is not a schedule. Okay. When the drywaller slips 2 days, your painters are pushed, your flooring is delayed, and your eating general conditions cost every day past the substantial completion date burns your fee. So this is actually painting the picture of the business challenge well in this copy. So kudos to you, AI. I think that's actually not bad copy here. The critical path warning. So it's taking a stab at communicating what the cost expenditure per day is. I would love to see this somehow connected to the product itself though. Like this on its own isolated, I think doesn't have the same level of impact as it would as if I was seeing this in context to the actual product visual command on the job site. So I feel like this is also just like rehashing the same kind of proof point that we had in this previous example here. So it's not really saying anything new or touching on a different facet of the tool. It's really kind of just like reiterating the same thing. And visualization here, maybe it's a step closer to what the actual product would look like, but it still doesn't feel like a fully articulated, like this is what the product would look like. There are some stats in regards to social proof. I would love to have seen this incorporated higher up in the experience, like potentially in this hero header like we've seen in some other examples. Having it down here I feel like is burying the value a bit. And then we have this standalone testimonial without connection to anything else. Ties into your existing stack. This would be placeholder I suppose for a few additional logos, but there's no context in terms of what the actual integration is. It just ties into your stack and here's some logos. That feels like a missed opportunity to me as well. There could be some additional value driven language in terms of the what's incorporated there. The final section, the final call to action here is like just built for your site, stop running jobs on Octane exports, real schedule, request a demo. Overall, this page is pretty light in terms of information, and I feel like the information it does have is kind of very repetitive. Like we're repeating the same points over and over again rather than looking at this from different angles like some of the other pages have generated. The design, while it's a little different because like this is a darker color palette than some of the other examples we've looked at as well, I still don't feel like is particularly customized or designed in a way where it feels really branded to me. There's a real lack of just visuals in general, right? Like we don't see the product. We don't even really see any stock photos to connect to things. It's kind of just straight information and color down the page. Honestly, I'm going to give this one a C-. I feel like it's lacking a lot of depth. It doesn't really go into the facets of the product. It has a couple of areas where it speaks to the challenges of a customer well, but it's very one-dimensional in terms of what it's talking about. So definitely not something I would want to represent my company. Definitely a lot of room for improvement here. Now, the last tool we're testing is Emergent. It's the newest, and it's honestly the most interesting tool on this list. All thanks to its multi-agent setup. See, instead of one AI model handling your prompt, Emergent deploys a whole team of specialized agents, including a builder, a designer, a quality, a deploy, and an ops. All of that working at the same time, reviewing each other's output, so there's a lot more back and forth and quality control happening than there is with other tools. That said, pricing goes from 10 free credits on standard at $20 immediately to $200 a month for pro. Now, that price is justified by the fact that on paper, it makes the strongest argument for being a solid web design tool compared to all the others that we reviewed so far. But let's see if the output actually backs that up. All right, let's check out Emergent. We'll take our prompt, we will copy and paste it into their terminal and see what we get. All right, so we have the fully rendered page by Emergent. Just worth noting, of the tools, I actually had to do a couple of reprompts, not to necessarily just the design, but just to get it to actually like go through the entire process. I don't know what was happening, if it was just like agents got caught or something, but it did take a little bit more finessing than I've had to with some of the other tools that we've tested today. But let's take a look from top to bottom in terms of the Emergent site. Interesting. So structurally, this opening section is doing some things really well. So it has clearly defined headline, subheadline, primary and secondary call to action. We got some proof points above in the form of metrics, and then we also have a visualization of the product all happening in this hero header section. Nitpicky, but from a design standpoint, I would probably opt to try to reduce the main headline so that it only fit onto 2 lines rather than 3. I think there can be potentially a lot going on in this header section, so anywhere we can pare it down, I think that would be a way to pare it down. I also feel like the highlight on the job should really be expanded to be costs you the job, because that's really like the most impactful thing in the headline. But I do think overall, like the copywriting for the headline is really direct. This is what people care about, so it's speaking directly to that pain point that people care about most. The subheadline does a good job of reiterating what, or expanding, I should say, on what the headline says. The call to actions are both very direct, so book a 20-minute demo. So not just book a demo, but they're setting expectations for how much of your time is going to be expected for this demo, or watch your 2-minute tour. So good, hey, this is higher value, I'm going to get on the phone and talk to a potential person, versus I just want to take a quick look at what's going on with this product. So I think the positioning of these two call to actions is good. I think the metrics that they pull out, so 23 average overrun reduction, 11 days earlier detection, and then 4.2x ROI would all be business metrics that somebody cares about. And then I do think they do a good job of connecting the visual to the points that they're making on the left by highlighting a graph that highlights very specifically, okay, this is how it could potentially detect things. Also like that there's a little bit of some interaction here. A little sad that when I click resolve, it doesn't actually do anything, but not a bad way of starting off the page. Here we would see again logo grid. This time they're using a marquee versus static. This is actually the first version of a page that we've seen that's using a marquee. So when there's a broad client base, it makes sense to use that. So I think that's an interesting touch. I also think that this section here, where they're talking about 3 things your current schedule can't do, and then it's calling out specific features that are not just feature presentations, but like how this connects to pain points that customers are experiencing. I think that's pretty well done. I do feel like not having a call to action in this section is a missed opportunity. This could potentially be a good nudge to get somebody to interact. I also think that the visualization could potentially benefit from having additional images of the product here rather rather than just icons, so that you can kind of see how each one of these points connect. Definitely some weirdness going on with the ragging here. So this being in 5 lines looks off, like we'd want that to be cleaned up. I also think that when we're thinking about a linear progression, stacking the boxes this way is a little bit awkward. I would opt to see like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 rather than this kind of crisscross pattern that they got going on here. But it is good, I would say, that they're talking about how it works, how it would be integrated. Again, could be a good opportunity for us to, let's say this was structured a little bit differently. We had an image of the product over here on the right, and then we had each one of these points as a vertical tab on the left. I can click from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and see how the product works in action. I think that would be a step in the right direction in terms of how do we visualize all of this. Again, this proof section I think is pretty strong, and the fact that they've incorporated the proof up here and then they've incorporated the proof again up here is good. This section that we were just talking about could potentially be a good candidate to have a testimonial or something for each one of these points included. So that I would say is an opportunity to bring some more of that social proof into the designs themselves. Here they're doing a good job of combining some of this proof. They have a testimonial associated with it. The metrics are clearly differentiated in bold. So yeah, I think again, one of the missing opportunities here is there's no call to action to drive them to a next step. You kind of just like get here and you pass on by. Now this section I think is nice. It's like a good way of addressing objectives in a way that's not just an FAQ section. And here they also include a call to action. So I would say start a pilot might be not obvious to most people. So start your risk-free trial could potentially be a better call to action positioning here. But I do like that there is a call to action step in this section. I would love to see that present in more of the previous sections. And as far as AI copywriting goes, I actually think that this headline is quite clever. So stop running jobs on Monday's information in a Tuesday world. I don't necessarily think that the grayed out treatment of this middle line is required. I think that, stop running jobs on Monday's information, doing a strike through styling could be an interesting way of doing it rather than applying the color change. But I would probably just have all this text be black and then just highlight, Tuesday world. But I do think like from an AI copywriting perspective, that's pretty clever. It's unique. And then here we're ending it with 2, obvious call to actions. I will say, and it's a little nitpicky, but I may opt to make these call to actions the red instead of the black, and then potentially choose a different accent color for these highlights, because my eye is drawn here rather than here. And we always want the call to action to be the predominant thing that we're looking at, not necessarily the copy. So there could be some finessing here in terms of how we're choosing to use colors strategically in these layouts. But overall, I would give this page a B+. I think there's a lot of components of it that are strong. I think that it does a good job, especially in this hero header, of having all the key components that you want for a hero header in place. There's obviously tweaks and finessing that can be done, but like pretty good start, and something that I would not be upset to have representing my company or my brand. All right, so there we have it. We've just reviewed a bunch of different AI tools that you can use today to build a website. Some of them I think are way more effective than others when it comes to actually building a page that conveys the message that needs to be conveyed and connects all the pieces together, whether it's verbal, visual, etc. Of all the ones that we reviewed, I would say Base 44 is probably the closest to what I would perceive as a final product. However, there's a few things that I think each one of these tools did not do a great job on. One is the intertwining of social proof throughout the experience. A lot of them got the hero header experience pretty well with incorporating some sort of metrics or social proof up top, but a lot of them lacked the ability to then weave in more of that social proof throughout the page. Some of them had more effective sections than other, but a lot of those sections were just individualized sections on the page. The other thing is that while some of them had more what I would perceive as design or branded elements, they all kind of just lacked that branded, polished feel that you would expect from a premium website. So some of them, Base 44 in particular, I think did a much better job of being able to bring some of that into the fold, but none of them really seem to have that like final polished touch that I would want to see in a finished site. But all that being said, if you are a small business on a limited budget and you need to launch something fast, I would recommend that you check out Base 44. I think it could be a really good product for an MVP, for a startup that doesn't have a huge budget to build a site, or just a small business that's like not trying to break the bank building their website. Otherwise, if you're a serious business, serious B2B that's looking to really like build a foundational piece that you can scale your business off of, these products might be a good like very early starting point, but I don't think any of them are mature enough yet to really deliver that final piece in like a 1 or 2 clicks session. And that's not just me hating on AI. It's the honest truth about what these tools are actually built to do, because AI builders are there to design pages for people who can't do it themselves. So they're not strategically built to convert. Now, with that said, if you want to learn how to create a landing page that consistently turns traffic into customers, check out this video next, and I'll see you there.